Okay. So our conversation at lunch was excellent because we were talking about like confident and training and everything to do with feeling safe. Well, was everyone there for the conversation? Were you all there for the conversation that happened at lunch today? Yeah. Halfway. Okay. So just to recap, what was discussed at lunch, amongst many other exciting things like music played from trumpets, historical paintings, but trumpets, we were talking about safe spaces in martial arts and martial arts training, and how, especially as trans people, we have had limited options in the past. That's not what I plan to talk about. I'm going to be a lot more general with my discussion of martial arts and intimacy, but I'm happy to circle back to that at the end to be more relevant to us specifically as people who are relating to or included by the queer community. But my intent really with this kind of talk is actually just to talk about how we negotiate discussions around comfort and intimacy, because there's a lot of parallels between partnering in martial arts and partnering with someone romantically and physically, and it's something that I'm not necessarily looking at like the horror stories, because it's so easy to generalize and be like, oh, this was a really bad experience, and then you can kind of polarize your feelings around that, you know. But what I want to kind of look at is the more kind of subtle stuff, the things that make you feel a certain way, but it's not something that you can clearly articulate. So I'm going to be sharing my own experiences, things that I've learned through my journey as a martial artist and conversations I've had with other people, and it's a little bit more fine-tuned than just this guy was an asshole or this person was an asshole and they hit me too hard and made me feel inferior or something. Like, that's not really what I'm talking about. So I'm paralleling it with intimacy in the bedroom because there are so many similarities to dating and to meeting people for the first time and trusting them with your body, your emotions, vulnerability, and what happens after that. So that's where I'm going with the workshop, and I'm laying it out because I don't know if it's going to bring up any kind of thoughts about your own training practices or times that you might have had a bad encounter with someone in the training situation, not necessarily in the bedroom, but in training specifically. So, a little bit about me. I am from New Zealand. I left my martial arts club several years ago to go travelling and see the world, but since I left, I have actually not felt comfortable or safe training anywhere, because all my primary experience and foundational experience was with people that I trusted, and I built that trust with these really experienced martial artists. I was so lucky. I knew it at the time, but leaving has reinforced that, because the club was kind of small in Wellington. It was a Western martial arts club like this, and the people who were there were coming from backgrounds of significant experience. So we had the head of style for the freestyle karate movement in New Zealand. So he was actually the guy training the instructors and doing the certifications, and he was studying HEMA. We had a Hapkido instructor who now is ordained in the legacy of Hapkido. I don't know exactly how to talk about it, but like basically he's ordained from the tradition from Korea. And then we had a very experienced power lifter, a chap called Colin McKinstry, who is built like a bear and also has very good physical structure. So he loves teaching people who are small, because he will teach you how to use your body and use the techniques that he uses, but he's huge, and he can do something and it doesn't look impressive, but then when he teaches a little person to do the same thing, it's like, yeah, that technique's good. So I had this wealth of very informed martial arts context when I was learning and growing up, and being like, I want to hit people with swords, which was basically me until, well, no, we're going to stop. Yeah, basically.
but when I was getting started, that was a really fantastic context for me because they made me feel safe, and I was safe to do anything. I was safe to try anything. Because those guys were so freaking controlled and had such mastery of their own ability to like kill people that I never was in danger. And I didn't understand that until I left and had to negotiate my own safety and my own boundaries. I had an additional problem because the moment I left New Zealand, I also became a celebrity, which put a huge amount of pressure on me every time I stepped into a martial arts club. Because the thing about martial arts is you need to be able to have the flexibility to make mistakes. You need to be able to do things wrong, fuck up, and not be at your best all the time because that's just part of growth. And I had a huge amount of tension on me. Some of it was warranted, some of it was completely just blown out of proportion, and I did not know how to handle it. It took me quite a few years to adjust to that, and I was absolutely freaking terrified because you imagine you've been doing your art for like 5 years or something, and you've come from a very specific community with a specific way of doing things, and then suddenly you're in a totally new culture where everyone's doing things differently, the language is different even, the way to talk about all the techniques, everything. I had experiences.
It doesn't live in our modern context anymore.
And then combined with the expectation and pressure, it was absolutely debilitating to me as a martial artist, because I froze. I absolutely froze because I didn't know how to train safely. And it was a really good reaction, I think, in retrospect, because I didn't put myself into so many difficult situations. However, it also decontextualized my training, because what happened to me was I had to be really, really careful about who I trained with, who I felt safe with. So I was essentially celibate as a martial artist for quite a long time. As a person who didn't really know how to form those connections with people, and the few people that I did, it gave me enough to keep my skills going, keep my input going, but it was definitely like this for a really long time, and it's taken me a long time to reconcile that as part of my journey, and also to recognize that I haven't lost my abilities as a martial artist just because I've had that really removed experience of feeling in a place where I'm safe.
None of them are really wearing.
So that's a little bit about where I'm coming from with this, and I also didn't ever admit any of this to anyone because smoke the swords is blah blah blah, freaking laser beams, and 6 foot tall and whatever. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. I just want to play with swords. That's really all it comes down to. And it's through the grace of other people that I've come to a place where I'm comfortable to actually be honest about my own journey, and also length of time. It's now been 10 years since I started doing all this. So I actually do know something, and I don't have that imposter syndrome of feeling like, oh god, like everyone's making more of this thing.
And then we've got a long volume through the legs.
So, the other thing is I'm not limited to doing I live in Montreal, and when I say limited, I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that I've got a lot of other opportunities for doing swordsmanship that are not necessarily within a martial context. So in Montreal, we have massive LARPing culture. It's absolutely amazing, and I will not go on about it for the rest of the freaking hour and a half, even though I could. But quick thing is that there are so many people in Quebec who have a really strong attachment to history that it's really quite mainstream to be involved in medieval stuff. So there's like this massive medieval culture. The downside to that is that because it's so easy for everyone to play with swords, there's actually not a huge humor scene, and it's only grown in recent years, really. There's good stuff happening, but it's also I think a little eclipsed by people picking up foam swords and going to the park and whacking each other, which is ultimately what I always wanted to do. So I've kind of come a bit full circle. The interesting thing about being in that kind of environment where so many people who don't have martial arts training are fighting each other with swords is that you do have to be really, really careful. Because if you are good at fighting and you want to fight, it's easy to hurt people. It's also easy to be hurt because you put yourself at more risk. You put yourself in more danger because you're like, I can do more.
be like the guy
have this much ability, and these people have this much ability, and haha, go me, you know. It's very easy to decontextualize yourself from
what I
your normal situation. So
Yeah.
how do we navigate that? How do I navigate that? Honestly, it's a case-by-case thing. My personal approach is to build trust with people and then over-communicate the hell out of things. But that's really boring. Because if you think about it in the context of the parallel of intimacy, like,
There's an element of they're never like the
you
same.
can't really have fun if you are just stopping every 5 seconds to be like, is this okay, is this okay, is this okay? It's important to set down boundaries, and it's important to communicate, but you've also got to have
There's always some amount of
partners. Because otherwise you take the fluidity out of it, you take the fun of the experience out of it, right?
It feels like the chest.
You guys know what I mean. Yeah. So it's definitely a balancing act. It's like
very upright.
being able to read a person and understanding how they changed as soon as you put in, well, as Kaya was talking about, adrenaline or the pressure of competition or even ego, like I had a name, so people who fight me want to do better than they normally would because they want to do well against me and get a tag on their belt or whatever. It's like that puts me at risk. That puts me at a lot of risk.
And I think
because
fairly commonly,
firstly, I have to perform at a level that it's not relative to where I'm at, and secondly, it's also it becomes a competitive thing, and it stops being a partnering thing. So when we're on the floor this morning, you guys, most of you folks, sorry, no guys, changing it. Sorry, I'm slowly changing my language.
This is where they naturally.
This morning we had a sort of butler workshop, and I was so proud of everyone because you were all so focused on working together. There was no real like, aha, I've got this and you haven't. And that's ideal. That's absolutely ideal. I didn't have to instruct you folks to do that. I didn't have to be like, be kind to your partner.
Everybody's kind of.
If we were in a place outside of Valkyrie, I absolutely would have had a conversation. We would have spent 5 to 10 minutes calibrating.
This isn't being.
But I made a judgment call, and I would have changed things up if I'd been wrong. But the calibration is so important when you're with someone for the first time, because everyone comes from a different background, right?
The body
Everyone's got a different idea of what's normal, what's comfortable for them. Where are you comfortable being hit? Where are you comfortable being touched?
And that's a very
So the interesting thing about weapons-based martial arts, and that's why I'm calling this workshop Saex, is because I reference weapons specifically, is that weapons-based martial arts and sword fighting sports in general, not necessarily martial arts, but like clapping and hitting people with sticks, you require less body understanding to do well at them, because you've got to think. I can hit you with it. I don't have to use my body. I don't have to engage with my body. Wonderful for people with body dysphoria. Absolutely freaking brilliant. Wonderful for people with trauma. I talked about this in a talk I did a few years back about how I was dealing with PTSD and what brought me out of myself was actually focusing on a weapon. Because I can engage with another person fighting-wise using a weapon. So it's a wonderful thing in that respect to get involved in weapons-based martial arts or weapon sports. Because it's almost like the barrier to entry is lower for people who don't feel comfortable, say, going into a jiu-jitsu situation or a karate situation, because that's so full on and it's so much, you know. And there's people who are wired to it.
They're relatively long, like they look like.
But there's a lot of people, myself included, who don't relate to that at all, or used to. Because when I was a teenager, I mean, I wanted to do swords, but I wasn't interested in rolling that with some sweaty person that was, you know, like grappling me, whatever. Like, not that I was necessarily like intimidated by that. It wasn't really ticking my boxes or getting me excited in the same way that like a sword would. So that's the wonderful thing about having a sword is you can, or a weapons-based martial art is you can have a lot of people come in and have no physical experience with their bodies. The downside is you have a whole bunch of people coming in who don't have physical experience with their bodies. So you're learning through doing. You're learning through, oh, how does this affect someone? And what tends to happen in places that do not have a lot of clubs or a lot of like necessarily structured guidance is that people make it up because that's all we have. That's we're doing the best with what we have. And there's now enough international support and there's enough people like talking about things on the internet to get more of a structured training, but there's still, we're now at this really interesting middling point where there's an expectation of professionalism, but there's also the lack of how to disseminate that and how do you have those conversations if you don't have a martial arts background or a martial arts training. How do you create safety with a training partner? Yeah. So
there are a
how do you create safety with a training partner?
What I want you to do now is pick up a knife that you think would
What's communication
pretty
then?
well.
What do you think of as communication?
Particular material.
I mean, there's say
And if you
stuff that we
open
do
up a
here
knife,
when you're grappling with someone for the first time.
and
like,
if there is
is
a
that
one
okay
that's
if I touch
exactly
your
like
hip
what you
here?
want,
Is it
find
okay if I
something
touch your here? Like, I think we were doing something where we literally had to like sit on each other at some point and just being like, is this cool? But I think there's also nonverbal communication where if someone suddenly looks like their posture is changing or something about their face is changing, it's kind of up to the other person to say like, hey, are you okay? I think that's kind of a like, communication as well, of just like physical or like,
they probably
you know,
look the most like what we've got.
obviously if someone doesn't look like they're having a good
Who
time,
ended up
then
with the bows?
that's a form of communication.
Excellent, excellent, all totally valid. How do you know when
Well,
you're
so
okay?
what informed your secondary?
Still had an edge and.
No one's okay. No one is okay. It's a trick question.
Cool, so there's a
We are
small
all not
modification that
okay.
you may or may not have to make.
And we are all okay at the same time. It's like a duality thing because okay is totally relative. If you are okay, what's that compared to? If you're not okay, what's that okay to? And if you're just working with someone for the first time, you don't know what their okay looks like. You don't know if they've got an expression on their face that when they're concentrating looks like they've got a toothache. You know, like, and I mean that in the best way. It's just like some people really focus and it comes through in their face. And if you can't read that person or you don't have a history
I'm
of
gonna
that
grab
person.
these guys because I also go by these.
So totally valid. Everything you just said is absolutely valid. It's
So there's 22
part of
techniques
what
in
I
here.
want to talk about, and I don't have all the answers. It's a conversation that I'm opening
But
up.
what if you actually do have your own knife?
How to negotiate all this stuff? How do you build that
If
kind
we
of
stick with the other 20,
experiential
what
trust with people?
it's possible to do is break them down into
Context.
very
Now, that's always my magic answer to everything is context.
because the thing is,
You
is
mentioned
that
coming into the space and being on somebody that you don't necessarily know and have a history with. What if we were not here? What if we were in the park? What if we were downtown in a dingy, low-lit training space which was shared with 3 other schools at the same time? You know, like, environmental factors play so much into it because they create tension. If you're under tension, you're always going to respond differently to if you're feeling comfortable and safe. And this circles back to Kaya's adrenaline talk about reducing things that cause stresses and making yourself feel safer. The most common way that we do that with martial arts is with safety equipment. Having good stuff in place to reduce the risk in the environment around you, making sure you feel like you're not going to cause a physical injury if you hit the floor, or you're going to hit someone in the head and you're not going to break them because they're wearing a mask, etc., etc. We don't always have access to that, especially with swordsmanship, because even though we now have the great benefit of having a lot of really good suppliers, not everyone has access to that, especially people who are lower income or no income, who are really passionate about the thing. These people, including myself, are going to find our own solutions to training because we love the thing more than we want. You know, it's, again, coming back to sex, it's like you really want to do the thing and you can't necessarily afford a condom. You still want to do the thing, like, people are going to find their own solutions and it's not safe all the time. It is safe if you're doing things with people who are on the same page with you.
And this is,
And from
again,
here,
coming back to you. So,
from
okay, we don't have a
whatever
condom, so no penetrative
flinch
sex.
reaction I've had to what's there.
Easy answer. Or do you have
I've
gloves,
got
etc., and we'll do something else. So it's about finding and communicating what makes you feel safe as well. But coming back to the sticky thing, how do you do that with someone that you've just met? You've just been thrown into a class, and that person's a little bit amped up. And
it starts
you know,
from
that was me last night. I was doing an excellent run through of all these the training methods that Valkyrie use. The 5x5s. It's the defensive thing. It's just for the folks on the internet who don't know about the 5x5s. It's basically a sequence of responses to different stimuli. So it could be an attack or a step through or a knife or a kick. And there's 5 different ways of responding to them, and it builds up into like this really, really fun sequence of interactions. And the guy that I was working with was really gracious, really excellent, and I was a little bit more than I wanted to be, and I could not dial it back down, especially when it was with a knife. I was moving too fast, I was hitting too hard, and I was responding in a way that I was not happy with. He was fine with it. I wasn't. I apologized. So this is where it starts to get a little sticky. Is what if you're the person who's making someone else's day bad? What if you're making your own day bad? You know, it's such an intimate, personal thing. The interactions with other people. I have a story of shame, and I also have a story of being injured by someone who was very unsafe. And I'm telling you ahead of time, so you know I'm not just being like, "Wow, this is my sub story," and also, "Wow, this is a thing that happened to me and I'm a victim." They're both very personal, and they both had quite a lot of effect on me as how I think about fighting. Actually, I have another story. We're gonna get all the stories.
Story time.
All of our
Water
first
time.
That's
I'm sorry, guys.
Yes.
Water
showing you.
The water in Vancouver is so nice.
It's
amazing,
yes.
Very similar, but if you
Especially compared to Montreal.
Yeah, I was happy with Montreal, but now I think I'm a bit spoiled.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Is it just filtered differently or just
It's the water is very soft.
Here and
Yeah.
here, and I
Yeah.
step forward and
Yeah.
left, like that's naturally going to take me a little bit further to do.
So the
just because of how long.
a few years back,
So they'll just sort of well,
I was visiting a new club in Montreal, and I'd never met these people before, and
we've got
I had that history of I've got a name.
just that same thing.
I don't have a lot of people I feel safe trusting and training with, and I'm going to go put myself out in a context where everyone knows who I am, and it involves swords. So I really was I was a little bit intimidated by going and visiting anybody at that point.
One of you gets a knife, one of you does not. And what I want you to do is
So,
just play with
I had a recommendation, a personal recommendation from a friend of mine that I trained with in New England, and he told me, I have a friend in Montreal at a club, you should go with them if you want, and match them for you, etc., etc. So I turned up at this club on the same day that I got a phone call from my mom
and just play with this
that a
back
friend of
and forth.
mine had been dragged under a logging truck whilst rescuing his dog, which I completely compartmentalized, had absolutely no reaction to, because I was on time to go and visit these people. I didn't realize that I was in shock. I had absolutely no idea. And I turned up at this club, it was very pleasant, and then I started training, and I started sparring with this person that I'd never met, who is a very competent, fairly to very competent FEMA fighter, who goes and does tournaments, who travels actually internationally, tall fellow, francophone, and we were sparring with masks and steel, long sword. And I kept deviating from what we'd agreed to. And when we got too close for swords, I went back to what I used to do at my club in New Zealand, which was
close work, striking, grappling, etc. But for me, it's punching because that was like the very first thing that I developed with all these guys in New Zealand who taught me to fight was transition into strikes. I would strike him straight in the face through the mask. Not terribly hard, but just demonstrative. And it happened a few times, and each time he was increasingly disturbed.
Where it feels good and where you're like,
and told me
I
as
should
much.
do something else.
And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'll stop it. And we kept going, and it was a trust thing. And then he had a secret because I hit him one too many times and he tore off his mask and threw it on the ground really dramatically and stomped off, and I'm like, oh my god, what have I done? And it was because I'd repeatedly struck him, which he had not consented to and had specified, let's just do torso strikes, etc. Or like cuts. And
that's an interesting
I ended up being absorbed into another thing, which was a drill about like exchanges. And it was really nice and it was pleasant, but I was so freaking embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. And I couldn't understand why I had done that. I couldn't understand why I had not been able to control my responses. And then it struck me later, it was like, oh, it's because I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I had no idea. And it was the scariest thing because I didn't know I wasn't okay. I was functioning absolutely, completely, apparently normally, and so it went into a situation like that. And I don't think I had adrenaline. That's the other thing, is I didn't have an adrenalized fighting situation. I was just going back to the very, very first thing that I had learned as a fighter.
And that might be a situation in which you discover that you don't like to survive.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okey-dokey.
All of my perceptions and all of my processing, internal processing, was standard. It was a bit like,
there's a reason there are two other.
I imagine a bit like what happens when you kind of blurt out what you're thinking, and you're like, oh fuck, why did I say that?
The second
And then it happens again and again, you're like, why did it, and you just put yourself in a corner and just rock quietly until you feel better. But the whole point was, I was out of control, and by that point I felt fairly competent and safe as a fighter. Enough to use steel with strangers in the cup. I took myself off steel for years after that. Years. I was like, no, I don't know how to... I don't know how to monitor myself enough to know when I'm not okay, and I don't have these people who've trained me that I trust enough to know me to contextualize that. So I took myself off steel. I started working with foam and other synthetics, which was an absolute gift because I've discovered so many things through doing that as an advanced martial artist, not just a beginner, which I can go into later. But basically, it was just this really horrible situation where I couldn't self-monitor, and there wasn't anyone there who knew me well enough to know that that wasn't normal. That wasn't normal behavior, or even if it was, just be like, hey Sam, let's go take five. Make me feel okay about things. Make me feel like I'm supported by someone who's more experienced than me, who I trust. It definitely did not reinforce the fact that I wanted to go visit any new clubs.
If I end up grabbing like this, because the flinch is unpredictable, right? If he's stabbing me and I go, oh fuck! I end up
it was a negative reinforcement for me going into new clubs and new environments. I was mortifyingly embarrassed for a really long time because I'm supposed to know what I was doing. Plus, I had a recommendation from a really experienced martial artist who I trained with. So it was.
There's no guarantee because my elbow's pointed at the ground, and if he pushes down hard.
So that was a situation where I was doing something without someone's consent. I was deviating from what they were comfortable with, and I made their day bad because of my own behavior. I had a similar experience again on a very small scale with someone else who was also very dramatic and did an identical motion and threw his helmet off onto the floor dramatically. And I was like, what is going on? And then that helped me feel better about the first one because apparently it's a thing with cisgender people from that part of the world. Smashed.
The French.
Is if the momentum of the action.
But yeah. So that was the thing that I did that I'm really not proud of. There was another thing that I did a little while later, which I'll circle back to.
This is how we end
But
up with
I
the
will
beer
tell
talk.
you now about something that happened
Is-
exactly a year ago in
Oh, it's coming in
an
fast, maybe I
unstructured training
can't
situation
Get
where
that nice
I
hard
had
supplements it.
I'd been invited to give a lecture, not even a fighting demonstration, but a lecture at a place that makes foam weapons. Really excellent company. Had a really good working relationship with them. Have a really good working relationship with them, and have been quite a few times to kind of look at their stuff and give feedback and that kind of thing. And they were running a big event, and I was there to deliver a talk on like the crossover basically of HEMA and using synthetic weapons. Totally up my street. I was very, very happy. Excuse me. They have a big underground cell, a big training hall where they fight and they play their own stuff and just have a really nice time. And it's a nice space to do that. It's not actually necessarily a martial arts school, but it's a space where people can very comfortably
Nice, Raven, that's exactly it!
meet and fight. So it's an unstructured training environment. For the lecture that I was giving, I was there for the entire day and was invited to go play in the space with the toys. And there were some folks there who'd come from a very long distance, and they were also customers of this particular foam supply, and they are a martial arts group. They were very pleasant people, and I enjoyed meeting them, and I was having a lovely time connecting with them as martial artists. They aren't exactly doing HEMA, but they are not doing HEMA either. So they're kind of in that kind of fringe zone of it's related, but it's not exactly following the sources, and they're developing their own thing. They are very hard hitters, and they told me as much. And I was still interested. I was still interested in playing with them. And I put myself in a very, very bad position because there was no one watching the space, and the head of the group and I agreed that we had to fight together. So in my alternate life doing LARPing in Quebec, my main weapon of choice is a spear. I fight with a 9-foot spear. 9 feet. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's like, it's its own thing, and I love it. And I don't get a lot of opportunities to do spear fencing, because there's not a lot of people who do HEMA who also happen to have 9-foot spears. Strangely. I'm sure they're there, but I just haven't had the opportunity to like merge those worlds. So I was meeting this guy who said that he did spear fighting, and I was like, oh my goodness, me too, I would love to do some spear fencing with you. We didn't communicate about the length of the spears. And for me, a standard spear is 9 foot long, so it's basically from this wall to that window.
Getting low enough is the hard part.
Yeah,
But the
about
thing
that,
about
that's about
shooting
that.
against a much shorter person is you get the arm up.
So that's a spear for me.
You have to make big
Distance is the
decisions.
thing, right? Distance and speed. And the distance you're standing from someone and how hard you hit them, etc. There's no side strikes, by the way. It's just a thrusting weapon. So it's basically a pike. I fight with a pike. You can do a lot of really, really nice stuff, especially if you're a longsword fencer, which is why I started doing spear in the first place, because there's so much transferability between longsword and spear. Most of the motion is the same. It's just the only thing that's really different is so that you don't have the ability to go into close work, and you also don't have protection and the distance and timing. You have to calibrate. So I was like, yay, spear fencing! I can finally fence a martial artist who can do spear. His idea of a spear was 5 feet long. Not a spear. That is a quarter staff. So that was the first mistake, was I didn't stop and think, okay, so this weapon is shorter, which means it's going to be faster, which means I'm going to be closer. Second mistake, we didn't communicate enough about the force used. And I knew that he and the group they'd already said that. So I was like, okay, I can accept it. I can deal with it.
Which was...
I was not wearing any protection, except for a face mask.
We had the season pivot, which was, oh shit, they have the momentum, I'm just gonna roll
We
with
were
that.
sparring, and he hit me so hard in the face,
The last
it pushed me back a foot
chunk of
and
responses we
pushed the
have
grill onto my face. I was okay. I was wearing a mouth guard. If I hadn't been wearing a mouth guard, I would have broken my tooth. That was my first warning. I didn't take it because it was so early in the sparring session that I was like, okay, I'm still adjusting to this guy. I haven't got my defense in order because I hadn't clicked on the fact I had this time. I just hadn't clicked on it. So my defense wasn't very good because I was too slow. I was in the wrong range. I was in the wrong measure. After he hit me in the face, we kept fighting, and then he hit me in the chest. And he hit me in the chest so hard that I could not close my arms for 2 weeks. I couldn't cough, I couldn't laugh, I couldn't orgasm, I couldn't sneeze, and my best friend was worried I was going to die because if a piece of bone breaks off inside your chest, it migrates, it can go through your heart. It was pretty serious. I continued fencing. So, this is where I really want to go into the nitty gritty and why I'm having this conversation in the first place. Because I've spent a lot of time thinking about why I kept going when I was in such a clearly unsafe situation. I was so unsafe, guys. It was insane. Not only did I keep fencing, but I had a smile on my face, and I blamed myself. Which is correct. I was not a victim. I was a consenting, willing partner in that situation who had decided to stay into something that was extremely dangerous and had no backup. We had a group of people who were watching us, so if I'd have passed out on the floor, I would have been okay. But there was no one calling it, there was no one mediating or moderating, or there was no backup. We were the most experienced people. And he was hurting me. And I was consenting to that. And not only that, but after the experience, I was so happy to have fought. I was so happy to have sparred that I praised the situation. And I'm not saying this in a negative way, because I stand by the fact that I had fun. But I put myself in tremendous risk, and I got an injury from that dangerous situation that stayed with me a long time, and I'm freaking lucky to be okay. So, I think I cracked a rib. I think he cracked my ribs, I should say. I'm taking a lot of ownership for this because I do think I had enough experience to reassess it if I had looked at it differently. I didn't end up going to a doctor because it got better faster. Like in the first day it was terrible, the second day it was better, and the third day it was better, and then it lasted for 2 weeks, but it wasn't like, I'm in pain for 3 days, I need to go see somebody. So I kind of never really got it checked out, and there was no documentation. I didn't report it. I went and delivered my lecture, etc., etc. So why did I let that happen? I was having fun. I was having fun. And I had an idea of my own abilities that was, I should know better and I should be able to do better so that he can't hit me. Because I was putting the pressure on myself to be defensive and to be better as a fighter and better as a blah blah, and I was forgetting that it's a partnership. It's a partnership. All martial arts is a partnership if you're doing it right. So we were in a competitive context because I was the guest, he was the big person from out of town. We were both meeting in an environment that should have been safe, but ultimately competing against each other. Context. And once I was in the situation, the other thing is I didn't want to stop because I was having fun. I wanted to continue, and also there's a lot of people who are there expecting things to go a certain way. Now, I'll be really clear, I have no problem stepping away from situations that are socially pressuring me. One of the great things about being on the fringes as a bizarre, weird, eccentric, artistic queer person is that you get really good at not caring what society really thinks about you. So I'm pretty good at stepping away, like, yay, high school for all the ostracization, thank you for teaching me those life skills. I don't care too much about stepping away when people are pressuring me into doing stuff. If I really don't want to do it, I won't do it. But the problem is that I wanted to do it, so.
Like, you know, I put myself on.
Thank you, that is a very valuable question, they were very pointy.
That's not gonna sound very well.
I never told him that he injured me as well.
So,
Because again, I took the blame for it.
Yeah.
I blamed myself. I was like, I should know better.
so assuming that this
Everyone that I've spoken to since then who has a decent martial arts experience or is an instructor in any way is like, no, that guy was unsafe. That guy's like really inconsiderate and unsafe. And I'm like, how do I know that though? Because if he has communicated at the beginning, we hit hard, and he's trying to cross-pollinate with other martial artists, like,
So like,
I don't know, maybe I'm going back too far his way. Maybe I'm like understanding too much where he's coming from, but I don't know. It's not for me to say, it's not for me to judge. All I can say is that in that situation, with the protection that I had or lack of, it was unsafe. So that's story number 2, where I was in a bad way because of a poor circumstance that I got myself into and didn't want to leave. I didn't feel like I wanted to leave. Story number 3, I'm extra ashamed about, so I've been following up.
It's okay.
So I was doing Eastern martial arts for a bit. I was doing Kempo. It was Kempo karate, which is a really bizarre and interesting thing. And it was the best that I had at the time because this was whilst I was traveling and I was living in a place where that was my martial arts option. So I joined up the local club and it was kind of adorable, and a couple of older guys there reminded me a lot of my people in New Zealand, and I felt like safe and happy and I was just doing the things. And it was kind of like the community club. And so there was a whole mix of people. There were like police who were going there to practice ground rolling and stuff, and there were also like teenagers from school coming in, like everything in between. I was having a really bad day. I was having a really bad day one day, and I did not want to be there. I did not want to do anything. I was like lazy as hell and didn't want to fight. And we'd been put in a sparring situation, and it was like kind of
so much drive. He has fallen right the fuck
anyone's going
backwards.
in, and I was in the ring with this young person, presumably female person, who I really didn't like her. She just like rubbed me the wrong way, and I just didn't really want to play with her. And I was so naughty because I intimidated the hell out of her because I just didn't want to fight. And I postured. And I was basically intimidating her to stay the fuck away from me because I didn't feel like fighting. I was very self-oriented that day.
That posture
and
the way that this
her coach kept saying, just attack her. Because at the time I was presenting female, etc. And she could not go near me because she was so unable to get past, you know how animals in nature, like predators and alpha males and everything, kind of posture, and it prevents fights because they'll get it all sorted out and they're like, oh, actually no, I don't want to fight you and run away. That was basically what I was doing. I was creating such a sense of intimidation for this young person that she couldn't come near me, and I knew it because I know my capabilities. I know how I affect people, and I know what I can do with that. And I also have a lot of like stage training, so I know how to use my body, how to change my shape, etc. And I was really naughty because no one else knew I was doing that, and it was just her. And I'm, again, so ashamed because I don't know how that impacted that young woman. I'm going to stick with it. I think she was a woman. I don't know how it impacted her for her future training. I don't know if she ever went back to that martial arts school. I don't know if she felt so threatened by me that it caused her to live in her own insecurities when she should have been in a safe space. She should have been in a place that was teaching her how to overcome those kind of things. Now, to be fair, we were in the ring where it was in a competitive context, not like partner training drills. But at the same time, I was an asshole. I was a total dick. And I did something that was really not okay. And no one else knew. And I know it because it's just between her and me. So, coming back to the context of intimacy in martial arts, this is really what is the concept. What happens between you and the other person is just between you and that other person. how that person makes you feel,
And then what he actually.
how long they look at you, how long they touch you, even if they're intending something or
So I'm
not,
treating it as a
how it makes you feel changes your experience of martial arts.
Moving away
It changes
from
whether or
that
not you feel good or you
And
feel
as you're pushing down to stab me, I'm just putting it on my shoulders.
how do you negotiate that? How do you
I love that
talk
one.
about that?
It's
When
one
your
that's
martial
the
arts
longest
experience
to
leaves you feeling isolated.
Because you're like, you're
How do
scooting with your
you
butt, like what is happening here?
So with
And if you
sex,
frame it in
it's
terms of
it's
that
pretty easy because
redirecting of the energy in that
if you
situation,
have a bad sexual encounter, there's probably another at least 4 billion people in the world
This is a weird one that
who've had sexual encounters
which is
that
if
can
you're just
possibly
grabbing
in
you
some way
and
relate
stab
to.
you again, you just.
But with martial arts, we're already limiting the demographic, right? Because
it's no
not everyone in the population is necessarily involved in martial arts. And then you limit it further by the fact that we do a special kind of martial arts, which is historical European swordsmanship. So you're limiting it again to, what's culturally specific.
Yeah.
Then if you're taking it out of the
Behind them
context
to
of
crank their fists.
historical swordsmanship and you're 2 people in a park with flapping weapons, it's like, who do you talk to about these encounters? Who do you talk to about the fact that you felt not good when you paired with that person? You really love the thing, you really love it, and even though you got injured emotionally or physically or both,
And this is actually.
you want to like turn up again and then,
Oh, you grab a little hand.
fine, I'm a sword
And
fighter.
you fall backwards and you.
It's
The way that Bronson uses
it's such a
it,
dangerous kind of
more obvious.
unspoken thing because we're losing good
Straighten your
people.
legs and
We're losing a
bend
lot
your
of good
arms.
people who would
And that
otherwise
will
continue,
pile
who
drive
don't know how to kind of communicate that kind of emotional, personal experience of how it made them feel.
If you're very careful.
We talk a lot about it when it's obviously wrong.
Without bending your arms, if you keep them straight, they can dive for a little bit.
Okay.
But this is
We talk about it a lot when it's obviously wrong, like for example,
And it
the
is,
experience
again,
of
that-
women and queer identifying people in mainstream martial arts culture is a really easy thing to identify. It's like
what some people-
martial man and diverse minority groups.
Yeah,
We're now
exactly,
at a
and
very
again,
happy
if we're thinking about
space
context, this is
where,
totally different.
especially in swordsmanship, thanks to the work of a lot of people in the HEMA community, where we're now there's enough of us that it's not as unusual to have a lot of women in a club or a lot of like queer people at events and stuff. So yay, happy progress.
But it's a drop off when they have is you hold their, if they're grabbing.
What I'm trying to say
you grab
is
their
that
own hand, hold you in place.
that's something that's been dealt with. That's as an uncomfortable experience for people, and that's a wonderful victory. Now we're in the more subtle thing.
And that's
We're
it,
in the
that's
more like next level.
So in those 3 actions.
How do we all feel safe? How do we all feel good? And it's not just women and minority groups that are affected by the macho kind of posturing and everything. I've spoken to a lot of cisgender guys who've been like, yeah, I don't feel good about training here because I feel like I have to hit harder or train tougher or be something I'm not to kind of show up and
That's one of the reasons why I tend to
And
think it's a very good
it's like
get control.
what I'm really trying to say is that what ends up happening is people get filtered out of progression because the people who stay are the ones who enjoy being hit so hard in the chest that they're thrown backwards a foot and take 2 weeks to close their arms and share bruises on Facebook. Like that becomes the people who stay. And I am not going to diminish that because that's fun for some people. I'm not going to diminish that. That is the happy space for some folks. It shouldn't be the only thing. And I'm not saying it is the only thing, I'm just saying that it tends to become an emulated
Actually, everybody switch
thing.
times and use a different
And if
one.
you don't feel good about being hurt,
It's not
you're
gonna
like,
make a huge difference, but
well,
it'll make
I don't feel good about being hurt, but they don't want to tell anyone because that makes me out to be a wuss, right?
You can also trade it with a pile.
One of the greatest things about training with those 3 guys in New Zealand for me was they had no ego. These are these guys in their 40s and 50s who've had like their whole martial arts career, and they know who they are. They're really good freaking martial artists, and they don't have to prove anything to anyone. And
The overhand and the
that's a
underhand
level of
attacks.
normal that we don't have in the human
we
community
skipped all the
yet,
grabby stuff
because
because none of us
most
really
people
were
are still figuring it out and coming to it new.
So
We've got some people who've been doing this for 25 or more years. That's excellent, but they're still few and far between, and most of us don't have access to that. I also don't, I can't speak for those people to say whether or not they had other martial arts influences in the training. I know folks like Guy Windsor do,
You have
but
until 3:05.
there's a lot of people who have kind
This
of
is your mission.
built the curriculum and built the structure for themselves and figured it out and worked out what's safe through trial and error, trial, error, etc. So we are now at the point where we get to define those conversations. We are the ones who get to say what kind of martial arts we want to practice and how we want that to
Nice. That was textbook.
Going to circle back to that or take a wee break just to kind of process because I've talked to you.
It's so that you
Yeah.
can punch people with it.
That's
I just need to check the time because I
Yeah,
didn't want to
yeah.
on the floor in that particular position.
It was like, yeah.
Oh, 5 after.
It was 5 after?
Oh, 5 after 2, yeah.
Okay. So we've been going for an hour.
And all this is
That's nice. That's not good.
because if we're not putting energy into it.
Do you mind if I check my comments on the live stream? Is it-
Please go for it.
Okay, cool.
I've seen a few of them.
I'm fine. I'm good. I'm all good.
Headphones are so relaxing. I'm like, must stay awake. Yes, I'm like being careful because I know that. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, this is the reason why I love headphones, but also, yeah,
Yeah.
they're not like necessarily.
They couldn't hear me. That sucks. Hi everyone. So I'm going to be continuing for another half hour. The live stream's probably going to time out in another 5 minutes. What I might do is I might wrap it now so that I can reset it and we'll wrap up. Yeah, words. I can do words. So just I'm here at Valkyrie. Hey, good to see everyone. I'm here at Valkyrie in Vancouver, and this is my lecture on intimacy and consent in martial arts practice. Yeah, it's a really good talk because it's not just me. There's other people we've been having these conversations all day actually about comfort zones because this is a specifically queer event, and there's a lot of people here who don't necessarily feel safe in other martial arts contexts. So Valkyrie have done an excellent job of making a safe space. And a space where we don't even think about being queer. It's like, we're who we are. We're people with swords. Mostly it's about the swords. So yeah, there's a lot of really good conversations happening today and coming out of this event. I am going to take a wee break. I will be back in a couple minutes if you guys folks want to tune in to the next part. It's only going to be another 25 minutes. Also, if you have any questions, I will not be able to answer them, so sucks to you. No, I'm joking. I will try and I'll try and circle back if you have questions in the comments, and I'll put up a post a bit later. So yeah, that's all for now until like another 3 minutes, and then we'll go again. Cool.